They say family always comes first, but sometimes family puts you last, even after you've given them everything. My name is Rachel. I'm 36 years old, and for the last 12 years of my life, I was my mother's full-time caregiver, nurse, cook, cleaner, counselor, punching bag, everything. And she was the woman who left me out of her will and gave everything to my brother, the one who left us both and never looked back. This is the story of how I gave up everything to be the good daughter, only to learn in the end that loyalty doesn't always get rewarded, but it can be reclaimed. Growing up, my brother Daniel and I were close. At least, that's how I remember it. We were only 2 years apart. I was the quiet one, the reader, the fixer. He was the wild one, charming, spontaneous, magnetic. Everyone loved Daniel, especially my mother. She always said he reminded her of our dad, bold, passionate, a little reckless. Problem was, our dad walked out when we were kids. And Daniel? Eventually, he did too. He left when he was 21, packed a backpack, took the last $500 from Mom's emergency stash, and disappeared. Said he was going to find himself. I was 19, in college, and working 2 part-time jobs to support Mom, who had just been diagnosed with early-stage MS. I kept thinking he'd come back, that one day we'd hear his knock on the door and he'd hug us both and say, "I'm sorry." But he didn't. No calls, no texts, no birthday cards, no check-ins. Just silence for 12 years. In that time, I dropped out of college. I moved back home. Mom's condition got worse. First the tremors, then the fatigue, then the day she couldn't even walk from her bed to the bathroom. She didn't want professional help. Said strangers made her feel like a burden. So I became her caretaker. At first, I told myself it was temporary, that I'd go back to school, that I'd finish my degree, maybe apply for med school. But temporary turned into routine. Routine turned into reality. And soon, my entire world was inside that house. I cooked her meals, bought her medication, cleaned her bed sheets when she had accidents and was too ashamed to tell me. Rubbed her feet at night while she cried, whispering apologies she never said in daylight. I washed her hair, missed birthdays, skipped weddings, turned down job offers, friendships, even dates, because I had to get home to Mom. She had good days, and on those days, she'd smile and tell me how grateful she was. But on the bad days, she'd lash out. Tell me I was wasting my life. Tell me if I were prettier, I wouldn't be alone. Tell me Daniel never would have let her rot like this. I told myself it was the illness talking, that I had to stay strong, that this was what love looked like. When I turned 30, she had a seizure. I thought she was going to die right there in the kitchen. That night, while she was unconscious in the hospital, I went home and cried on the floor for 3 hours straight. And for the first time, I wished it was over. Not because I didn't love her, but because I couldn't recognize myself anymore. Then one day, out of nowhere, I got a message from Daniel. It was short, just 3 words. Is Mom alive? No greeting, no apology, no explanation. Just that. I didn't reply. 2 days later, he called. I let it ring. Then he texted me. I'm coming back. He showed up 3 weeks later, unannounced. Same smug grin, same expensive watch, same swagger like the last 12 years didn't happen. I opened the door and he said, "Hey, little sis." I didn't speak. I just stared. He walked into the house like it was his, like his scent still belonged in the hallway, like he expected Mom to come running. She did. The second she saw him, she burst into tears and threw her arms around him. She sobbed, "My baby's home." I stood behind her, invisible. Weeks after that were surreal. Daniel suddenly became the golden boy again. He cooked once, bought her a scarf, and told her stories about adventures in Bali and healing from emotional trauma. He made her laugh. He gave her flowers. He posted selfies with her on Facebook with captions like, "Family is everything." And people commented, "So sweet. Such a good son. What a beautiful reunion." Meanwhile, I was the one scrubbing her bedpans. One night, I confronted him. I asked him why he came back. Why now? He looked me dead in the eye and said, "Because she doesn't have much time left, and I want to say goodbye properly." It sounded noble, almost sincere. But something in his tone chilled me. 3 months later, Mom passed away. It happened in her sleep, peacefully. I sat by her bed all night, held her hand until it turned cold, whispered prayers I wasn't even sure I believed anymore. Daniel arrived 5 hours later, gave a show at the funeral, hugged everyone, spoke at the podium like he'd never missed a moment. I stayed silent. Because grief makes you tired, too tired to fight. But the real betrayal hadn't even happened yet. That came 2 weeks later, at the reading of the will. I expected nothing grand. I assumed she'd split things evenly, the house, the savings, a few family heirlooms. I was wrong. The lawyer unfolded the document, and with a neutral expression, he read, "To my daughter Rachel, I leave my journal and the family china. To my beloved son Daniel, I leave the house, the life insurance policy, and all remaining financial accounts." Silence. I stared at the paper, at the lawyer, then at my brother, who didn't even flinch. That night, I found the journal, the one she left for me. Inside, her handwriting, shaky but deliberate. "Rachel, I know this will hurt, but I need you to understand. You were always strong. Daniel needed this more than you do. He reminds me of your father, and part of me always hoped he'd come back, that he'd make things right. I'm sorry. I know you'll be fine. You always have been. Love, Mom." That was the moment I realized I wasn't just the daughter who stayed. I was the backup plan, the safe one, the invisible one. And she didn't reward me for my love. She punished me for my reliability. I didn't speak to Daniel after the will reading. He texted me once, just a line, "We should talk about the house." I didn't respond because I knew there was nothing to talk about, not anymore. He got everything I gave my life up for. But I wasn't angry, not yet. What I felt first was hollow. I stopped eating, stopped showering some days. I sat in Mom's room for hours, just staring at the oxygen machine she didn't need anymore. Tried to remember what her voice sounded like when she loved me, not when she pitied me, not when she compared me to him, but when she saw me. It had been years. I reread her letter over and over, like the pain would somehow rewrite itself. But it didn't. She was gone, and I had nothing. Except her journal. It was tucked under her pillow the night she died. The pages were thin, stained with time and ink smudges. Some entries were memories, some were complaints, some were confessions. I wasn't looking for answers when I read it, but I found one. August 17th, 2 years ago. I think Daniel's lying about the money. He said he needed help with a new startup and asked for access to my savings. I told him no, but he got angry, said Rachel wouldn't understand if I gave it to him anyway. Maybe I'll do it quietly, just until he's back on his feet. And then this entry. He keeps talking about the house, says it would make sense for me to sign it over to him early to avoid legal headaches later. I said no. He didn't like that. I flipped the page. The next entry was 4 weeks later. Daniel came by again. He was sweet this time, said he missed our talks. I gave him a copy of my keys. Rachel doesn't know. My stomach twisted. I kept reading. Entry after entry, she softened. He came by more often, said all the right things. She was lonely. She wanted to believe he'd changed. And Daniel, he used that. He groomed her, not romantically, but emotionally, manipulated her like a child begging for forgiveness while planning something else entirely. I called the bank, posed as my mother, got access to the archived statements, and there it was. $38,000 transferred out in a series of withdrawals to an account labeled WD Enterprises, Daniel's initials. I took the documents, copied them, stashed them. Then I called an estate attorney. Turns out, Daniel had coached her on rewriting the will, helped her move assets into his name, pushed her to leave me out because, in his words, Rachel will be fine. She always is. But what he didn't know was this. Some of the withdrawals were illegal. He'd forged one of her checks, badly, and there were inconsistencies in her signature on the property transfer. My lawyer filed a formal challenge to the will. It triggered a full investigation. I didn't talk to Daniel during the proceedings. He sent me a barrage of guilt texts. "You're really doing this? She wanted me to have it. This is why you'll always be alone, Rach." But the evidence was clear. The forensic accountant confirmed it. And when Daniel was deposed under oath, he cracked. Tried to play it off like it was all out of love, but the damage was done. The court reversed the property transfer. He had to forfeit the house. The life insurance was frozen, then redistributed, and I received full ownership of the estate retroactively. I didn't celebrate. I cried, not because I won, but because I had to fight in the first place. A month later, I sold the house. I moved to a small coastal town 3 hours away. No one knows me there. They just know I like quiet places and coffee at 7 a.m. I started painting again. I went back to school. I adopted a dog named Henry who sleeps at my feet while I journal, just like Mom used to. As for Daniel, I heard he tried to start a podcast about forgiveness and healing. It flopped. Turns out you can't build a platform on top of lies. He texted me last week, said he wanted to rebuild the family. I didn't even open it because I finally understand. Family isn't who shares your blood, it's who shares your pain and doesn't run when it gets heavy. I loved my mother, even if she never saw all I gave, even if she chose him in the end. But I've stopped trying to be the good daughter because I've learned that being good doesn't mean being silent. Sometimes it means fighting for yourself when no one else will. And that's exactly what I did.